is going on, guys? Welcome on back to Second and Short, and today we are talking about fantasy football here on Fantasy Fridays, where we're going to talk about all of our studs, duds, and sleepers for the upcoming Week 6 of the fantasy season. My name is Tyler Lauder, and I am joined with my co-host Aaron Ben. Aaron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It was a heck of a Tuesday night game that we had between the Titans and the Bills, and I'm excited to see what's in store for us in Week 6.
Yeah, some might say it might be the best Tuesday night football game of all time for the NFL.
I mean, probably one of the best I've ever seen.
All right. Well, all jokes aside and everything, let's talk about some fantasy football. Let's talk about some studs that we think are going to have, a pretty good week here in Week 6. And we want to kind of push this a little bit differently than we have been. Like, we've been kind of going with this team is like ranked 30th against this position, so you should automatically start this guy. And we're going to kind of change it up because we're going to lead with quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. And now, while Fitzpatrick is playing the Jets, who are a bad team, when it comes to fantasy points, they're actually they're like 10th overall for against quarterbacks. So, Aaron, let's talk about why Ryan Fitzpatrick is our stud of the week for quarterbacks.
Well, as I watch this Jets team, they're just slowly getting worse and worse throughout the season. And I'm comparing it to what I'm seeing from Ryan Fitzpatrick, who seems like, if you look at his stats throughout the first few games, he had a really bad game against the Patriots. And then yesterday, he had another monster game. Had 350 yards, threw for 3 touchdowns. So I think he's going to keep up that momentum. It looks like he's going to go like bad game, then 2 good games, then bad game, and then 2 good games. That's how I see the pattern going out. I think he's going to ball out against the Jets. I think he's going to have another game with at least close to 300 yards. I think he'll have another 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think he's a good, solid start. We're starting to get into some bye weeks. So maybe your quarterback is out for the week. He could be a good option to pick up for this week.
Yeah, if you include week 1, he's averaging 20 points per game, which is insane for a guy that in a lot of leagues isn't even rostered, or if he is rostered, you're not starting him most of the time. But if you take out week 1, he's averaging about 25 points per game. And it just goes to show you that in fantasy football, it's not always like the best team has the best fantasy players, although right now Russell Wilson argues that potentially. But I mean, like right now we're seeing the Dolphins, who are kind of they're looking better than they were last year. And one thing we should always know and remember is that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a baller. This guy walks out, swag city. He's here to play. He's always he just puts on a show. And I think this week, the trend's going to continue. The Jets right now are doing decent against. Hang on, I want to pull this up so I can actually know. Who'd they play this week? So far, the quarterbacks that have had the best success against the Jets have been Josh Allen in week 1, and in week 5, Kyler Murray just almost threw for about 400 yards. If we look at the rest of those weeks that make the Jets defense against the quarterbacks look better, they're playing San Francisco in week 2 when Jimmy G got hurt, and that game was just a mess. Week 3, they're playing against Phillip Rivers, and I mean, if you want to check out what we think about Phillip Rivers right now, just watch our Monday Movers episode. He is going down. And then week 3, they played against Brett Rippon out of Denver. So, I mean, against a third-string quarterback. Of course they're going to look good. But now they come in and they're going to have to play against a top-notch guy, and it's not going to go well for him. All right, and let's give you another stud. Another stud is going to be a guy that has actually been dominating the fantasy landscape over the past couple of weeks at the running back position ever since Christian McCaffrey went away, and that is running back Mike Davis, who currently on the season is ranked as the number 7 overall running back in fantasy in PPR leagues.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the hot commodity ever since Christian McCaffrey went out. He's kind of taken up the role, not only as a running back, because, I mean, he hasn't broken 100 yards for a game so far this season, but he's come in and he's playing that kind of like running back / slot receiver / pass catcher that Christian McCaffrey had been doing. Just this past game, he rushed for 89 yards. He also had 9 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, on the season, he has in the past 4 games, he has 30 receptions, good for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's also ran for over 220 yards in the past 4 games with the touchdown. He's just beasting everywhere he goes. And in week 6, he's going to be going up against the Chicago Bears, who just allowed Ronald Jones to rush for over 100 yards against them. And so if you're going to be getting a guy that is more involved in the offense and is looking like a better runner than Ronald Jones, then I would expect him to get over 100 yards for the first time this season with rushing, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets closer to 150, 175 total yards.
Okay. Yeah, he's looking like he's more and more being this good option to play while Christian McCaffrey is out. He's probably starting in most leagues, rostered in over 90% of leagues. So, I mean, if you haven't got him, he might be a little expensive to trade for at this point, but if you already have him, start him.
Yeah, he is in the must-start category going forward. When Christian McCaffrey comes, I'm going to say that he's going to be a flex option, at least that first week, and then we'll see how things go. But as it stands right now, I would be surprised if he isn't putting up 20, 25 points against the Bears. Now, let's keep it the same position, but let's shift over to our duds. Let's talk about a guy that this week we saw him kind of get the load as Nick Chubb's out, and he's going to continue to get the load until Chubb's back. Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is going to be our first dud for week 6, and he's going up against Pittsburgh Steelers. So far, out of 4 games, the Pittsburgh Steelers have allowed 0 running backs to get over 100 yards. The best was in Denver week 2 with those 90 rushing yards. That's team rushing. In week 1, they allowed 7 rushing yards. In week 2, they allowed 90. Week 3, they allowed 24. In week 5, Miles Sanders got 80 yards. So yes, that looks great and everything. He had a 75-yard touchdown on 11 carries. He had 80 total yards. That means his next 10 carries netted him 5 yards, which I think is a more true showing than a boom, huge touchdown. They've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns on the season to all opposing running backs. And I just think this is going to be a difficult day for Kareem Hunt. Baker Mayfield is going to be throwing the ball more, and I just don't see Hunt delivering against the Steelers, front 7.
Yeah, and I mean the Browns have had this monstrous rushing attack throughout the first few games of the season, but then the second they played this Indianapolis Colts defense, who was a little bit better defense than they'd faced the rest of the season. They averaged less than 4 yards per carry, and they stuck with this running back by committee, even though Nick Chubb is out. So they've been using like all of their 3rd, 4th string guys as well. Kareem Hunt going up like as part of this running back by committee, going up against a better Indianapolis Colts defense. He only had 72 yards. Didn't have any touchdowns. And he did have a receiving touchdown, but he's not used as much in the receiving game as some other running backs that you might want to pick up before him.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this is one of those weeks that, obviously with injuries and like bye weeks, there's 4 teams on bye this next week, you're going to be forced to put in a position to play him. But if you have an alternative, let's say you went running back heavy in your draft, and he's like a 3rd guy, flex a wide receiver, flex a tight end, get him out of your lineup, don't take the risk. Obviously, a touchdown changes things. Whenever we're talking about duds, and I hear somebody go, well, yeah, but they scored a touchdown. Yeah, of course, touchdowns are an anomaly. Like, they're not like an actual thing that we factor into this. Realistically, he shouldn't be able to get off the ground against these Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, moving on. Who else do you think is going to have kind of a game?
Well, sticking with this same position, I'm going to go with Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers, even though he's got a great first name. He's going up this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who've got a really nasty run defense so far this year. They're giving up just 2.7 yards per rush, just under 60 yards per game. They've only allowed 4 rushing touchdowns on the entire year. It's just looking like Aaron Jones is a really good running back. He's really good both on the ground and catching passes out of the backfield. But I think if I have him on my team this week, I'm not risking it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
here's the thing, and I know this is going to be the biggest clapback moment on this list and everything. For Aaron Jones to have success against Tampa Bay, he must get receptions. And the truth and the fact of the matter is that we just saw Jamal Williams get the bulk of receptions in the previous game with them being down Lazard and Adams. We're seeing, Rodgers rely on the tight end he's never done. He's throwing it to Williams out of the backfield, and Jones isn't getting all these targets that we'd want him to get as the number one running back there. Tampa Bay has allowed 60 yards rushing. That's the cap. They've done it twice, and then they allowed 30 and 32. They're not allowing anybody to get off the ground. But like I said, they've shown flashes where guys can get bulks of receptions. You're going to be forced to start Aaron Jones this week. That's an obvious. Unless, like I said in the last thing, if you're running back heavy, you're going to be forced to start him. But we're letting you know his projection is he's not going to meet it. I'd be surprised if he touches 15 points this week. So take it with a grain of salt. Do what you must, but just steer clear. And it's time to wake up because we got some sleepers. I love saying stuff like that. We got two guys here that potentially could have very big weeks on their, on hand, depending on their situations. We're going to stick with the running back, and we're going to talk about running backs a lot today. We're going to talk about Minnesota Vikings running back, Madison Alexander.
Madison is a player that probably not a lot of people have heard about, and he may come as a surprise to anyone who has been watching Dalvin Cook play this year. But Cook did go down with an injury this past week. We're not really sure what his status is going to be as of this recording. Alexander Madison is going to come in. He'll probably take the bulk of the carries against a weaker Atlanta Falcons team whose run defense has been let's just say it's not been good at all. He should be good for a spot start if you got someone on a bye. I think he'll be good for at least 10 to 15 points. Not great, but enough to kind of get you by if you got someone who's sitting out this week.
Yeah, to be honest right now, if Cook is out, Madison is going to have one of those situations where he can have a great week. I mean, he put up 112 rushing yards on 20 carries. He also had 3 receptions for 24 yards. Cook went out in the third quarter. So, I mean, they gave him a good workload. Cook had a groin injury. Since they're going up against Atlanta, it might be a situation where they take a week and they rest him. And on the year so far, Alexander, this is in backup duty. He has 276 yards, 8 receptions, 1 touchdown. That's as a reserve. So if you give this guy the full workload, I think he's going to do even better than that. I think he has a chance to be a top 10 running back this week if Dalvin Cook is out. Atlanta is terrible. We just saw Mike Davis, who is a backup running back, go for over 30 fantasy points. I'm sorry, Atlanta fans. Your team is the 2020. Please let my offensive players play against you in fantasy so I can win my matchup type of team.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we've seen what Teddy Bridgewater and all his receivers did against them this past week. We've seen what Dak did against them. We've seen what pretty much every team that comes and plays them is just racking up fantasy points like no other.
Yeah, I think one of those like high school teams came in and like dropped like 400 passing yards against them one week. I'm not sure. I'd have to go relook at everything, but I'm pretty sure I heard that happen. But let's talk about one more sleeper, and let's get away from the running back position, and let's talk about a wide receiver. Let's talk about Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Christian Kirk. Aaron, why do you think he has a good chance to have a good week this week?
Well, first of all, the obvious is going up against the Dallas Cowboys, whose pass defense has been atrocious. They just gave up 130 some yards to Darius Slayton, who's actually come into his own so far this year, in my opinion. But yeah, Dallas Cowboys defense has been bad. Arizona Cardinals are going to come in. I think Kyler Murray's coming off a game in which he threw for almost 400 yards. He's going to be spreading it around. Hopkins fans, Hopkins owners, don't be afraid. He's still going to get his catches. He's still going to get his touchdowns. But I think Kyler Murray's just going to be able to spread it around enough and get to Christian Kirk, who has a lot of potential, and he's shown a lot of talent and the potential to come in and score some big points.
Yeah, he's got 21 targets on 4 games. It's only resulted in 11 receptions for 154 yards, but I think that this is going to be the game, if there's ever a game, that we're going to see Hopkins go for like 150. We're going to see Larry get like 80 potentially. And we're going to see Christian Kirk go for like 110. And it's just going to be one of those weeks where it's like, oh, I'm so glad I have a Cardinals receiver. Per ESPN, the NFL average for team defenses allowing fantasy points to all opposing wide receivers per game for a defense is about 37. 37 fantasy points. The Dallas Cowboys, going into week 5, were allowing 51 fantasy points to all opposing receivers they're playing. They only allowed about 30 this past week. It's going to drop a little bit. It's probably about 48, but still, that is my point right there. Like 48 fantasy points, we're going to see Hopkins get 20. Why can't we see Kirk get 15? With the projections, him being around 10 points or under based on what website you're on or what service you're using, I'm telling you right now, he is going to surpass that easily. And that is going to do it for us here on Fantasy Fridays. Thank you guys for tuning in on listening to our week 6 edition of our Fantasy Football Talk on our studs, duds, and sleepers. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on everything we got going on here at Second and Short. We do have a series going down every Monday, as well as this one every Friday. 2 episodes a week, something a lot of people don't do. We got it going down. Leave a like. Let us know what you think about this video. Comment down below. And if you want to see more of us, check us out.
Check us out on Facebook, where we update every single episode that we put out. We're also on Twitter, where we're interacting, putting up polls. And on Instagram, we have update our story, news updates, discussion points, anything you want. Send us a message on any platform, anytime you want, any time of the day.
Thanks for listening, guys, and good luck in your matchup.